Greetings, I am V3, and welcome back to Leave It to VACCI. In this episode, V2 becomes an expert dogfighting pilot in a matter of seconds. You'll soon see what I mean. So, what are we waiting for? Let's get to it.
In this round, I complete the challenge to destroy toilets. This was one of the most unpleasant missions in my database, as sometimes while breaking the stupid things, I'd get eliminated because I wasn't vigilant enough. Suffice it to say, I hated having to do this. Anyway, I'm about to search this chest on top of this crystal. Once I do, I get an AK, small shield potion, wood, and some medium bullets. My organic ally soon engaged another looper, as I'm building and editing my way to the top of their build to try to get a clear view of our opponents. I soon edit a door into this wall, then broke an enemy's ramp on the other side. Not seeing the enemies in the distance, I look around for them, completely oblivious to the danger ahead of me. Then I turn around, close and open the door, and go back in and down their fortress. As I fell gently back onto the crystal where I searched the chest, I saw Spirit Eye pointing his gun to the right, and turned my attention to that direction. Then an opponent tried to take me from behind, but I swiftly showed her the business end of my AR, knocking her to her knees. This apparently gave me some progress on the challenge to damage our opponents from above. I then scaled their fortress back to the top of it, and once I got outside on the other side, I decided it would be safe enough to start drinking both small shield potions right there. As I did, my Emperor, Spirit Eye, eliminated yet another looper, showing off his incredible fighting abilities. Yes, Spirit Eye is the Emperor of Trolland, the country of which created me via Marty Jester's hands. By proxy, that's the country and leader I'm loyal to, or was, at least. Don't get me wrong, my mission is to take orders from and protect Spirit Eye, but due to these circumstances, and possibility of getting to go home should I obey him, my loyalty is also to this Agent Jones. I have an internal debate about whether or not to pick up a 0-point shot, but I eventually decided to crush it in my hand, and give myself the power to instantaneously dash forward several meters. I use this power to close in on an enemy looper's fortress, and within a few seconds, my systems were crippled by this bizarre-looking looper. They then instantly paid in blood for it, as Gunner took them down in one expertly aimed shotgun blast, then finished them off with an SMG. Noticing that they had a better charged shotgun, Gunner replaced his own, then joined Spirit Eye in his own battle. All the while, my systems were gradually losing power, and I was getting less and less confident that they would repair me in time. Still, they fought fiercely against the loopers at the top, myself hiding at the bottom under the structure they were fighting on to keep further damages from occurring. As Gunner came down off the top of the structure, Spirit Eye finished off the opponent they were fighting, and Gunner, against all logical odds, ran to my side as my remaining power reached 30%. Once he had repaired my systems enough that I could stand on my feet, netting me part of the challenge to revive a looper in 3 different matches in the process, he then chucked me a med kit, allowing me to repair my systems the rest of the way. Being programmed to survive by any means necessary, you think I'm going to pass that opportunity up? I took full advantage of the opportunity, and after the 10-second patch-up, my systems were as good as new. After I also drank enough small shield potions to restore a 50% shield, I looked over to Spirit Eye as he was taking a med kit. Noting it would take a long time, I move ahead to the next predicted eye, damaging my legs by falling into the shallow water of the river in the process. But I kept moving, as they were still sturdy enough to carry me to the next eye. Spirit Eye and Gunner soon follow, knowing that, despite my calculated nature and vicious combat programming, I didn't know enough about building to truly save myself, and given that some of the best loopers build blindingly fast, my goose was cooked if I were to run into a looper like that again. At this point, I was en route to Weeping Woods, where I completed the challenge this round is notable for, apparently securing my 3rd point. I breached the boundary where sand meets dirt, grass, and trees, around this point. My destination, by proxy, is one of the lodges within the woods. I dare say that Weeping Woods is home to some form of camping complex. It's actually fascinating that the lodges were made of logs and some sort of green material for the roof, as Trolland's architecture, at least the architecture of the village I was constructed in, was not like this. However, at the time, I was more focused on getting into the lodge that had the toilets in question, and destroying as many as I could. I quickly found said restroom, barged in, looked around for the toilets in question, and after grabbing the grenades at the other end, and trying to figure out how to get into the stalls where the toilets were, I decided that the fastest way was to break the stalls themselves.
We're in the middle of the zone.
In this round, I make a start on the challenge to damage vehicles. This is where you'll see what V3D1 was talking about when calling me an expert dogfighting pilot. I was going to land on the outpost itself, but then I remembered there was a glitch that made it to when one Stormwing got disturbed, it would cause a chain reaction and the rest would careen off the edge as well. And someone was gliding with me at this moment, so I turned back towards the planes. Once I finally got into one of the plane's cockpit, I took off, and started searching for a vehicle to damage, whether it be a plane or some other ground or marine vehicle. In part of my search, I fly over this valley of snow-covered pine trees, just ahead of some buildings. Despite flying right towards them, I never descend upon them, just a simple flyover. As you can see, I make a pretty sharp right turn once I realize nobody's there, and continue to fly in a western flight path. I weave around to avoid the mountain summits, all the while keeping a sensor trained for enemy loopers. I appear to be staying near the shores of the island, where many of the outposts are. This may be an attempt by me to get some progress on the challenge to visit outposts, a challenge that was stolen from me by Zeta Beetle by the sounds of it. But, like I said before, I don't really care, just as long as I get to complete the objective Agent Jones gave me, and ensure a certain trip back home. At this point, I exit the snowy part of the island, and enter a grassy part instead. It is interesting that for one thing, a southern part of the island is colder than the northern part, and for another, only the central part of the island's southern part is cooler than the rest. However, where I came from, there are all sorts of bizarre biomes, even some that completely defy the laws of real life. Like, a desert, which is always inhospitable to a snow golem, can be right next to a biome with icy spikes jutting out of the ground. It is at this point that my plane runs out of fuel, and I am ejected from my seat. My new mission to refuel it so that I can return to the skies. I appear to have completed the challenge of landing at a landmark, so I got that point, at least. After having broken down the wall, securing the medkit, ammo box, and, eventually, gas can, my sonar picks up the footsteps of an enemy looper, and I quickly go to refuel my plane. The only thing quick about it, however, was my arrival near my aircraft, as the refueling takes a good 18 seconds. Like I said before, on this island, what would normally be a very short amount of time is painfully long, as in that time, a looper could sneak up right behind you, and eliminate you effortlessly. I had to expend some fuel to boost out of my predicament of being stuck against this wall, despite there being a reverse option on the plane. I then attempted to refuel the plane while flying. However, all I really accomplished was unleashing a stream of brown liquid off the side of the plane, which realistically would have made that area flammable, and it would only take a spark from a gun to create a narrow, weaving stream of fire down below. However, that's one thing I'm glad they didn't add to the game, as since that's connected to the gas can, it could have also very easily blown me up right in the middle of my experiment. Once I flew over a Snowmando outpost, I then turned my attention back to the snowy area of the island, flying towards the beacons of light that marked après-ski, some sort of entertainment venue perched atop one of the many southern mountains of the island. I'm not sure why I was flying towards it, however. I don't think I have a challenge there, but I could be wrong. All I know is that soon, I'll be seeing a new aircraft flying through the sky, and pursuing it until it's gone. I make a left turn and fly clean over the show building, and continue on an eastern path back to where I came from. I continue on this scenic route, with inside of a waterfall that Jester, Gunner, and Spirit I would no doubt find stunning. However, I am devoid of any such emotion, so it's merely business as usual for me. I continue with a swiveling flight path, vigilantly searching for a looper to dive bomb, or a vehicle to destroy. However, neither were present at the moment, even as I flew past the blue metal building. Then, out of the corner of my senses, I see it. The enemy plane piloted by a looper I was tasked with keeping on the island. As I said before, I immediately give chase, not wanting to let Agent Jones down and have my privilege to go home revoked. I start blasting as soon as my targeting reticle is fixed on the enemy aircraft, and the dogfight officially begins. We both weave through the mountains, myself aggressively pummeling the enemy aircraft with everything mine had. I became so persistent in fact that I overheated my plane's turrets, and had to wait for them to cool down before I could fire upon the aircraft again. However, I never let them out of my sight. I was determined to shoot them down, no matter what it took. They, however, were clearly terrified of my aggression and skill, as they pulled up hard in an attempt to lose me. And it's at this point here, just after they eject from their plane, that I blew it to smithereens. As I said before, I then try to kill them out of the air, with the same aggression and persistence as the plane, but despite that, my quarry got away. In this clip, I make a start on the challenge to destroy enemy structures. This is pretty obvious in what I have to do. But, don't misunderstand, even if the objective is simple to understand, it's never that easy to execute. As most loopers that build these types of structures are typically the highly skilled and aggressive loopers that could destroy you in milliseconds, especially now in an endgame phase. I boldly step out from behind my opponent's wall, and start firing at another opponent. After a few hits and misses, I eliminated the looper with my pistol as they were about to try to escape through the river. I then dart back into the shed I and an enemy helped make, as at this point, not seeking shelter is most likely to sentence you to death, or destruction in my case. I told my spectator that I planned out that attack extensively, and they left shortly afterwards. I then started applying shield potions, since I had 2 of them, and my shields were at 0%. After applying the second one, getting my shields to 100%, I move on towards another fight where 2 loopers were building rapidly and firing upon one another. As they fought, I gathered ammunition and building materials that a fallen opponent dropped, also grabbing a lever action rifle. Despite my earlier statement, I decided to rush this looper, and attacking them with my tactical shotgun. It was an enemy Lexa, and in 2 well-placed shots, I eliminated her without taking damage myself. I then checked through the weapons, ammo, and building materials she dropped for anything more useful than I already had. To my satisfaction, I was able to replace the tactical shotgun I eliminated her with, picking up a purple one in the process. As I rushed for cover, my opponent from across the river started firing at me again, making me redouble my efforts. I stayed inside the walls, floors, and ramps, determined to force them to rush me, but as you saw during the fight against Lexa, that would be a poor idea. Especially with survival programming kicking in strongly at this point, it would take nothing less than a brilliant, ruthless strategy to put me down this time, because I sure wasn't going down without a fierce fight. I poke out here with my lever action rifle, attempting to quickly eliminate the opponent across the river and get them out of my circuits. Being denied a shot, I then retreat to the next predicted eye, building another brick shed in the process. After building the remaining wall, ceiling, and roof, I then awaited the inevitable rush, and kept my weapon at the ready. This was a final showdown. I have never been more alert, paying close attention to my sonar, and prepared to react at the slightest hint that I would be forced to fight. To act too late would seal my fate. This phrase played on repeat in my hard drive, my survival programming heightening my senses to the highest levels they could go, and I was ready to snap if need be. My sonar picked up my opponent's footsteps on the other side of my walls, and I watched where it told me the sounds came from vigilantly, as I knew they were trying to find the sneakiest way through my wall. which would grant them certain victory. I wasn't going to let them shoot me from anywhere but my heavily armed front, and even then, I was determined to not let them get away with it scot-free. However, what the sonar didn't tell me was that they were above me. The only reason I know that now is that I saw them in action against the original opponent across the river. They had taken them out from a bridge they had built far above the river, and then went to work on their own fortress. The final showdown begins now. My opponent breached my wall as I was explaining that, and we had a fierce trade of shells and bullets, but I think my attacks hurt worse, as they quickly retreated and started healing. My opponent then took another of my walls, replacing it with their own, but I wasn't going to let them keep it, blasting it with my shotgun, getting a face full of shells in the process. This fierce game of cat and mouse had my opponent replacing my walls with theirs, and most of the time, I reacted by replacing theirs with mine, as long as doing so wouldn't open up my flank to a sneak attack. After our latest exchange, I replaced the most recent wall they took with my own, determined not to let them keep a wall as long as I wasn't at risk. I switched to my pistol here, planning to put on the pressure on my opponent. This plan worked, as they once again retreated to heal. Instead of replacing their wall with mine this time, I built a ramp between myself and the wall, and start repairing my systems. Then the looper arrived at my left flank, ready to begin their assault anew. They unleashed rounds from their SMG as I fired more rounds from my pistol, once again stalemating the showdown. As we were both healing, the storm closed in behind me, forcing me on the run. However, I was caught between a rock and a hard place, as my opponent was waiting for me on the other side, and blasted me with a devastating shotgun ambush, and my survival programming went into overdrive. I didn't have time to register having completed the quest to hit weak points. I was destroyed trying to survive this conflict. In this round, I completed the challenge to damage vehicles with players inside, like the second clip where a challenge was shown, or third clip overall. For those of you who like to be politically correct, I start by landing near the Stormwings. This time, however, the vehicle in question was not a Stormwing, nor did I complete the challenge from in the air, nor was the vehicle even destroyed, but instead, it was a car moving rapidly towards me, and I scared the driver off with a gun on foot. Anyway, this round can be viewed as the third clip's mirror image, as instead of left to go west and south, I went right to go north and east. You know, that round where I destroyed the enemy's Stormwing with my own? Now you get it. I seem to be on a flight path over Retail Row, and toward Dirty Docks, surveying the land for any vehicles to damage, or any looper to eliminate. Regardless of which I get, the Stormwing was involved. I made perfectly sure about that. And before you state the obvious that I went both north and east in the third clip, bear in mind that I didn't start out that way. I did that U-turn on the return trip. Anyway, I arrived at Dirty Docks and continued on my northward flight path. I suddenly swing my plane from left to right as if I hit some turbulence, but no such thing existed on the island at the time. This could simply be a quick sweep to look for enemy loopers, or it could be me testing how fast I can move the plane should it come under fire. Regardless, I continue my erratic flight path, facing towards and away from Dirty Docks. Once I got past that, my plane alerted me that it was running low on fuel, and that if I didn't do something soon, we were going down. So I straightened up my flight path to fly to the nearest gas station, knowing that it wouldn't be too much longer before my plane ran out of fuel, and we'd be nosediving to the ground. Unfortunately, I didn't explicitly know where that was exactly, so I just flew in the general direction I figured one might be. As soon as I spotted it, however, the inevitable happened. The plane ran out of fuel, and we were on a collision course with the ground. I ejected as the plane nosedived towards a boulder, and glided to the gas station, my objective to seek out a gas can. As a last resort, I grabbed a pistol from this storage shed, as I knew ground combat was a possibility I couldn't ignore. Then I made my way into the main gas station, grabbing a tactical shotgun and shield potion. I then go into the fenced-off area in the back, where I finally found the gas can in question. I then made a beeline back to my plane. Despite it being faster to drive to it, I make this journey entirely on foot, for reasons I can no longer remember. Whatever my reasons back then, I seemed to have a strict vehicle preference of Stormwing only. However, as I said before, it takes a good chunk of time to get to my plane, and at any moment, I could come under fire, and most likely be forced to use the pistol I designated as a last resort. Maybe my process of thought was the always irritating possibility of the land vehicle having a boot on it, and not willing to take the risk. As I attempted to flip my plane right side up, a looper in a car comes over the hill and tries to hit me. As it swung around, I fire upon it with my pistol, damaging the vehicle, smashing the driver's side window, and hitting the driver within. This gave them the message to back down, or be eliminated, as they turned back towards steamy stacks, and drove off. This gave me the much needed opportunity to try and work on my plane, as well as a point courtesy of damaged vehicles with loopers inside. Once I finished refueling it, I tried to flip it upright again, only to be able to drive it anyway. Wrongfully thinking the rock was interfering with it, I smashed it to pieces, then tried to flip it again. I think, during the first try at flipping the plane, the tree interfered with it, and it glitched, letting me drive it upside down. When I was able to drive it again, I eventually gave up on flipping it upright, and boosted off the ground upside down. I'm so glad that the logic of this island protects you from jet-powered upside-down liftoffs, or I'd likely be destroyed right then and there, or at least seriously damaged. For whatever reason, this liftoff consumed much less fuel than the liftoff against the wall. Maybe the effort was less to pull up upside down, and then right itself, than to push past a brick wall. Whatever happened, I was happy to be in the air once more, and I flew around, mostly out of reach of the bounty hunter down below, most likely the looper that tried to flatten me into a gold bar with their car. Realizing that it was literally impossible, and generally a bad idea, to stay in one place with the Stormwing, I loop around the outer walls of the next predicted eye. This would still come with a risk of getting shot down, but I too had guns, not just the turrets of the Stormwing, but also my two weapons which I collected at and near the gas station. In this round, I completed the challenge to Reboot Teammates. I also seem to impress Jester's friends so much that they invite me to join their clan, whatever that may be. This is solid proof that I can handle whatever loopers come my way, and am in fact a good choice for this Agent Jones to have abducted and enlisted to keep loopers from leaving the island. Anyway, I mistakenly landed on this tree, then take a leap of faith, miraculously landing safely on the ground in the process. I then move on to search for weapons, ammo, medical supplies, and all building materials. I eventually discovered a house, and judging on the island's usual logic, I thought where there's a house, there will a weapon be. This mindset proved rewarding, as I picked up a tactical shotgun off the floor once I found it. The tactical shotgun is seriously underrated, as it can make for intense close quarters combat. This is due to its firing rate, and the fact that it peppers foes with shrapnel and shots. But, its effectiveness does diminish when you are further away from your opponent. I'm going to put this conversation on hold for now, as I'm about to engage my first opponent, and I need to focus. As I leave the house after grabbing a green AK, an oversized banana in a suit starts attacking from behind the tree. After easily knocking it down with my AK, I finish it off with my shotgun. As I was saying, I will admit that the tactical shotgun is weaker at long range. But, that's any shotgun, so you can't really blame it. I have heard that people have trouble hitting their opponents hard even up close, but I wonder if they don't just graze their opponents with the outermost part of the spray instead of just hitting central and harder. If you really want to hit
I
a
hear
devastating
footsteps.
headshot with a tactical shotgun, do
I don't-
yourself a favor and aim for the chest or neck instead.
Mhm.
At least part of the spray will hit the head, and the tactical shotgun will inflict the desired damage. Anyway,
It's
I
kinda
opened
like
this
cheating,
chest,
but it's
only
kinda
to be
not
greeted by my personal
at the same
favorite
time.
AR in any match, the original. I'm sorry for you AK fans out there, but the original AR has a better firing rate, so I prefer it instead. I'm not disregarding the easy kill on Jackal Viper, aka the oversized banana in a suit, but I am certain of where my weapon
Yeah.
proficiencies are. Here, I stand guard near FTC Goodness while he's fishing,
Yeah,
as if he's a friend of Gunner, who himself is registered as a friend in my facial recognition database. Then I trust him too. I don't trust him so blindly as to not watch him for any sign of betrayal towards myself, Spirit Eye, Gunner, and especially
Yeah,
Jester,
apparently.
but I trust him for now within reason. Now, as for what I would do should he betray Trolland or the Confederacy of Independent Droids, that's simple. I'd switch to the weapon best suited for the range he was at, and go to town until he was eliminated. Simple as.
Yeah, it really
As I
was.
return to this house with an erratic path, TTV Sweaty AJ, FTC Goodness's
You never know,
friend,
he
praises
might have a
Jester
dark
for his
side.
gentle choice of words. This makes me register AJ as another friend of Jester's. However, I will say that Jester had not added AJ to my facial recognition database, so how they know
by the
each
way,
other,
we're in
let
Jurassic
alone that
Park,
fondly,
so
must have
that's
been
not really
classified
confidential.
information. Being completely
I don't
loyal
know
to
what
Jester,
Jester's doing,
I don't
but,
question this
he's
choice,
fishing.
as it's really none of my business how
Just like
Jester and
no
AJ
one-
know one another. All I
Jester
need to
just
know is that they
dominated.
know each other, and whether or not AJ is about to stab him in the back. It's here that we realized that AJ had landed on a peninsula northwest of Stealthy Stronghold, upon which a lighthouse was built. I don't know why he landed separately
Yeah,
from
he's
us,
such a
but I'm
goated
sure
at the
he had
game.
his reasons. As long as he remained on the island, I wasn't
good.
bothered by his confidence in taking loopers on his own. It would have been nice if he'd landed with us, as there's more safety in numbers, but no major engagements on either end have occurred, so I'll let it slide. I really didn't have a choice. As we discuss a legendary looper named Booger, FTC eventually points out a medkit in the river. I had to turn around to see for sure what it was, but when I identified it as a medkit, I started making my way to it. This is where I'm so happy my circuits are waterproof, because this is one of the many times I've had to swim. But Jester created me for all-terrain combat, whether it be land or sea. With everything I have learned, I've even conquered the air since arriving on the island.
game.
With every weapon I learn about, and every technique I
Really
learn,
good.
I will soon learn the most efficient way to
good.
dispose of enemy loopers, and make my journey home all the more certain. As I walk
Imagine you
past
just
this
get
tree
one
to the
shot.
eastern gate of the stronghold, I keep an eye out for any enemy loopers that cross our path. We're not too far away from our second major engagement, and yet AJ is still nowhere to be seen. This time,
What do you
however,
want?
the fight wouldn't go as well as my previous engagement against Jackal Viper. Even FTC was far away from me when I engaged this looper, but, riding high from my victory against Jackal Viper, I boldly engaged them anyway, which turned out to be a costly mistake. This is where the second
You're loud like
engagement
a chicken.
begins. Unlike the banana, who went
Someone's
down quickly,
shooting.
and wasn't very accurate with their suppressed SMG, this
No.
looper had a better suited
Oh,
weapon
it's
for
not
long-range attacks,
Leave it.
and after exchanging fire,
Don't worry.
I was the one brought to my knees this time.
I'm stuck on the
However,
bridge?
my
Okay,
opponent
I know.
wasn't bothered to
And
finish
I
me
have
off,
nowhere-
instead rushing out the eastern
no
door,
idea how to
and
do
engaging
that,
more
so-
enemy loopers on the
Don't
other
worry, I'm
side.
coming. I'm
It's
the
this
closest one to
decision,
him. Where
as
is
well
he,
as
Jester?
FTC's timely
Where is he?
arrival, that ended up saving my life. I reported
Should I
that my
try and pistol
assailant
with
went
him?
outside the
he camping
stronghold,
behind my
though with the
tree?
group of loopers we're soon about to fight, I think my assailant was already eliminated.
I was good at it.
FTC
You should
started
ask me
repairing
mine.
my
I got all
systems,
my kills with
though,
the pistol.
like Gunner, was
Yesterday.
inexperienced
Yeah,
with my design, and thus could only manage enough
Yeah.
to get
I'm
me
joking,
back
I'm
on my
joking.
feet. I then
should-
rushed for
probably
cover
should do
behind
that.
this tree,
He really
and
Where
built a
is
wooden
he?
box around myself.
Why
Once
would
I felt
somebody
like
have
I
this
was safe
flag?
enough, I took care of
I
the rest
see
of the
him.
repairs with my med kit,
No.
with its usual
Mommy,
10-second
help. He just
application
no-scoping.
process. As I did,
knows?
my
Oh
allies
my
went
God.
through the
Hey,
eastern
Ma, watch
door
out behind you.
and
Oh,
engaged the
Jester,
enemy
you're on.
loopers on the other side. However, they were both overwhelmed and eliminated, leaving it up to me to take the enemy loopers out and collect their ever mysterious reboot cards, seemingly mystical devices that can flawlessly bring back the looper that produced said card. My survival programming was now in full force, as underestimating my last opponent and nearly being eliminated taught me the lesson I should have remembered before engaging my opponent. I ambushed my opponents with an AR and tactical shotgun. This was what impressed my friends so much, both calling me a god. I wasn't aware it was that easy for a droid to become a deity, but here we are. I grabbed FTC's card, then as I collected weapons, ammo, medical supplies and building materials, AJ reminds me that I needed to collect his card too. Once I do, I head back into the room where I planned my deadly ambush to repair my damages with a med kit. Once I finish in the next 10 seconds, I then make my way to the equally fascinating reboot van. While I was en route, AJ approached me with the offer to join their clan when I was halfway to the mystical vehicle, but since I knew nothing about it, I had no answer for his offer, and I stayed silent. Instead, I just ran to the reboot van and started the rebooting process. As I was rebooting my allies, AJ discusses making me a leader and emoting Grey Gunner. I wasn't sure how to feel about surpassing my superior in rank, so I silently rebooted them. Much like applying a med kit, rebooting teammates takes a good 10 seconds, but once it finishes, I had rebooted the last teammate I needed for the challenge, earning myself that point.
And that appears to be all the time we have for today. Join us next time when we get new battle droids from Y Labs, collect books from Holly Hedges, collect gnomes from Holly Hedges, and eliminate opponents with assault rifles. In the meantime, thanks for watching, we hope you enjoyed, and we will see you all next time. Until then, farewell.